Hello, this is Dr. John Hart, your instructor, and I'll be going over this study that I did with some of my patients to cover some of the high points of the course and address some of the prompts in your assignments coming up. I looked at resting pulse rates, heart rates, before and after chiropractic adjustment in this small study of 10 patients. And to align this with your first milestone, this is the template for the milestone 1 and milestone 2 and the final project. So you save milestone 1 and 2 for the final project. Those two will be part of your final project. The first prompt is asking the purpose of the study and also the research question and hypothesis. Sometimes it can be as simple as gleaning those three in the title. So the purpose, looking at resting heart rates under chiropractic care, that will cover that. And in the introduction, in the abstract, you can sometimes get the purpose there. Here's the purpose. It's comparing a measure of neurological health. That's resting pulse rate can be used for that. And before and after adjustment. The research question, you want to formulate that into a question. And in this case, what changes occur in resting heart rate after chiropractic adjustment? So that would be a research question. And the hypothesis is a statement, and not about purpose, but of what is generally accepted. For example, this first sentence here, effectiveness of a healthcare intervention is of interest to patients and providers. So pretty basic. The design of the study. Is it observational or experimental? A clue to whether a study is experimental is if the patients were randomly assigned to different treatment groups. And if you don't see that, usually found in the methods section, almost always, I can't imagine it would be found in any other section, if not in the introduction, but the methods. And we can see how the patients were selected. And they were consecutively selected, so that's not random. So we would say observational for that one. How was the data collected? So what's the data? The data in this case is heart rate or pulse rate, and taken at the wrist. You see that there. And is it appropriate? Yeah, that's actually a gold standard. Like EKG is also a gold standard. Another method would be app-based, but in this case the old-fashioned way was used. Counting at the wrist. Type of data, quantitative or categorical. So quantitative is where a bunch of numbers are possible, like heart rate, as opposed to categorical. An example there is yes, no replies in a survey, just two possibilities. But in heart rate, lots of possibilities. 70, 71, 72, and so on. And you can give an example of what your reply is. If you said categorical, okay, what's an example in that study that you selected? So you'll be selecting a paper from a list of 3 provided. What's an example of quantitative? Some studies might have both. So that's milestone 1. Milestone 2, continuing. Method of data analysis, different than data collection. Data analysis. Let's go to my study here, and that's usually found in the methods section. So data analysis, histograms. So that's a type of graph showing the data. That is an example of data analysis. And the paired t-test, that's an example of data analysis. So again, different than data collection. Like resting pulse rate protocol, that is a data collection. And here, over here we have analysis, and this helps if there's a heading like that, but even if there's not a heading, you can look to see, did they calculate averages? Did they do a test where they get a p-value, a probability value that the difference between samples, in this case before and after adjustment, happened by chance? That's what that p-value is, arguably the most important part of statistics. Demographics of the study, age, gender, and that is going to be found also in methods, and in results we see age here, average age 52.4. What else? Consecutively selected patients. So that's the demographics, gender, age, race, if that's mentioned in the paper. What were the p-values? So again, milestone 2. Were they statistically significant? I go into this in detail in my upcoming module announcements, but we get this in results. So here's some results. Average age and average initial pulse rate was 80.3, and it decreased to 74.7, so that's good. A lower resting heart rate is better than a higher one in general. Lots of research supporting that. And this difference was statistically significant because the p-value is less than 0.05 is the threshold. So we'll learn more about that as we go along in the course. So what were the p-values? 0.04, statistically significant? Yes, because it's less than 0.05. Differences between the groups, just touched on that, and that's also in results. Difference between groups. In this case, there's just one group, but we can see before and after will be our quote-unquote groups. And so that's the end of milestone 2, and the rest of it is new for the final project, but hang on to these 2 assignments. They are to be included in your final project. Limitations of the study, population and sample size. In this case, pretty small sample, 10 patients. So that's a limitation. Patients from this practice, the results may not apply to another practice, is another limitation. Study design. could be said weakness because it's not a randomized study, but it also it's its strength. Its observational studies are sometimes referred to as real-world studies. So we're not randomizing treatments in the real world. Patients are getting treated after careful consideration by their provider. And how did my study compare to a similar study in the reference section? So I've got references that I can discuss, and that is usually in the discussion area. So you can pick a study in your selected paper and briefly compare. And I compare to a study here, reference number 19, and a study on hypertension, and that study is here, number 19. And how does your selected study contribute to the scientific literature? If nothing else, it adds to existing data that is out there. And you could mention in what particular way. In my study, I'm adding to literature on outcomes studies, outcome of resting heart rate in this case, and what might the next steps be. Next steps might be a more rigorous design, like a randomized study. If there can be a placebo type group. So that's kind of hard to do in chiropractic, but that would be a next step. Or a next step might be same study design, observational, with a larger sample. Another step would be having other chiropractors do similar studies with heart rate or another evidence-based measure like resting heart rate. And thank you for watching. If you have questions, feel free to post them under the general questions thread in the discussion area. And over and out.